All right, the Five Nights at Freddy's movie is now out, of course, based on the famous video game. But just a couple quick things before we get into the video. First of all, this will be a spoiler review. So if you haven't seen the movie, then you should probably click away from this video. The second thing, if you have seen the movie, let me know down in the comments down below. Did you like the movie? What were your thoughts on the reveal at the end? I'd like to hear what you guys think down in the comments down below. But let's get into the video. All right, so going into this movie, for me personally, I definitely had some tempered expectations, especially after watching Megan, another PG-13 Blumhouse horror movie. I was definitely expecting something with not a lot of gore, not a lot of scares, but just enough there where it is a scary movie, but it's kind of made for a younger audience and more of like a broad audience that can sell a lot of tickets and do very well at the box office. That was kind of what I was expecting. But I will say, this movie definitely did surprise me, and we're going to kind of talk about some of the reasons why. So I'm going to go through, like I mentioned, chronologically throughout the movie, and we're going to kind of review a lot of the moments throughout the movie and then talk about kind of the big reveal at the end. All right, so the intro to the movie is kind of like the hook to the movie, right? We're with the security guard. He's at the pizzeria. He's panicking. He's like unscrewing this vent, trying to get away from something. We kind of already know what he's probably trying to get away from, but I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that they kind of like threw us right into something right away, which was kind of, fun to me. It was kind of creepy. There were some cool moments. It was also kind of like, the moment where he dies. It was like kind of like a little Saw trap. I enjoyed that. We just got done with a lot of Saw stuff going on. Saw X just came out. I just recently reviewed a lot of the Saw movies, and so I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of a cool little like, Freddy's Saw trap kind of a thing. So I enjoyed the little intro part of the movie. All right, and then after the security guard dies, we kind of get this cool little like 8-bit like video game kind of introduction for the opening credits, and I enjoyed that. That was kind of a cool little 80s vibe, a throwback to when, the pizzeria was kind of big, and I just thought that was a cool little thing, because a lot of times you get opening credits that are just kind of like, all right, when are we getting to the movie? Why do we show the credits at the beginning of the movie? Why don't we show them at the end? Could you imagine in a YouTube video if I had like a 10-minute credit scene at the beginning of the video? My click-through rate would be terrible. Nobody would watch the videos. But anyways, I enjoyed the little 8-bit video game kind of a little thing that they did. Then after the opening credits, we get to meet Mike Schmidt, our main character, who we see is kind of like at this mall. He's probably eating some Sbarros or something, or whatever the hell he's eating. Maybe having a Wetzel's Pretzels, just having a great time. But Mike's there with a buddy of his who's also a security guard. And then he sees a kid kind of by himself. And also, like, at least for me, I think the audience is kind of like, oh, shoot, like, Mike clearly looks concerned. So we're like, oh, is that kid alone? Like, oh shit, what's going to happen to this kid? And then we see the kid kind of get like snatched a little bit in like kind of an aggressive way, but kind of, I would say quickly, you kind of realize, oh, okay, Mike's probably going to make a mistake here. This doesn't really seem like he's being kidnapped. But right away, you're getting a little bit of a hint on what you're going to find out with Mike's character later in the movie. He freaks out, and clearly you can see there, like, there was some sort of a trigger with that whole scene. He starts just beating the shit out of the guy, nonstop, punching him in the fountain, and so right away, you're kind of getting a little bit of a hint at who this character Mike is. He's clearly got some dark issues going on. Something's happened, especially with some sort of a child kidnapping. That's a trigger for him. And I thought that was a cool little unique little nugget that they gave us that we're going to kind of reveal more moments about later on in the movie. And I was kind of wondering, when are they going to implement Matthew Lillard? Like, what's his character going to be? I try not to watch too many Blumhouse trailers, so I didn't really see the name tag in front of him in the trailers. I just saw his face because I'm not really trying to pay attention too much because they just spoil way too many things nowadays. But anyways, we get Matthew Lillard's character right here, and I'm like, oh, okay, damn, great. It's Stu Macher. I love this. But so Matthew Lillard's character is basically like a career counselor. So essentially, Mike needs to get a job. And a big part of that reason is because he's basically the guardian over his little sister, Abby. And he needs to get a job basically to keep her, because the courts are not really going to like it if he's just like this bum who doesn't have a job. He's not that nurturing. He's not that great of a kind of father figure to her. Even though she really, really loves him, he's just kind of like, he's in a dark place. So it's hard for him to like take care of his little sister and do all the things that she needs and give her all the love that she needs. But anyways, Matthew Lillard's character is an enjoyable character right away. Like, oh, he's like perfect for this role. He's doing a great job in the role. I enjoyed his character in the movie, but But anyways, he's basically like, all right, Mike, this isn't looking good. You have basically been fired from every job you've had, you know, some of them like in a couple days. Your resume is basically dog shit. And Mike's like, all right, I mean, do you have a job for me? Whatever. And he's like, right as he's, you know, Mike's kind of walking out the door, he's basically like, I got a job for you. Wink, wink. And Mike's like, all right, what is it? And he's like, well, the pay is shit. The hours are terrible, but do you want it? Do you? Maybe? And Mike's like, yeah, I'm kind of interested. And then he tells him that it's nights. So Mike is like, okay, I don't work nights. And then he's like, okay, fine. Here's my card. Take off. See you later. And then after that is when we also kind of learn a little bit more into Mike's backstory. And we see these dreams that he's starting to have. In the opening scene with his buddy, the security guard, he also kind of shows off this little book that he's reading on how to kind of like manipulate your dreams in a way. But essentially we find out here that Mike's having these dreams about a kid that gets kidnapped. We don't know who the kid is exactly at this point, but we do see in his dreams, he just witnesses over and over again, essentially this kid being kidnapped. You can kind of guess who the kid is. It's his brother, Garrett. But that's this moment in the movie, and it's just another one of those things. It's just giving us little pieces that makes you wonder and makes you kind of think about, okay, what is this? Why is he so into his dreams? What's happening here? What happened to his brother? Did they ever find him? Did he die? Did they ever capture the dude that did this to him? These are all kind of things that keep you like wanting more from the movie. And then we also learn here along the way that there's a bit of a custody battle going on here with Mike's aunt, Jane, who he just thinks, you know, wants to get custody over Abby so she can get checks from the government. We're also getting that vibe as well. She just kind of seems scummy, you know what I mean? Just the way she's going about doing it. She's getting lawyers involved. She doesn't obviously give a shit about Mike. She's kind of doesn't really even seem to care about Abby, but it's kind of like introducing us to like, you know, one of the villains in the story. And it's also very, very similar to the movie Megan. I mentioned that, another Blumhouse PG-13 horror movie that came out last year, has a little bit of that custody battle, but we'll talk about some of those similarities a little bit. There were quite a few things in this movie that were kind of, I don't want to say like stolen because it's kind of the same production company, but copied and pasted a little bit from Megan. Like, hey, this formula worked. Let's use a little bit of that stuff. But that was something in the movie that was implemented as well. Oh, and by the way, I do have to mention Jane's lawyer, Doug. Great character. Love that guy. He's like this overweight dude who just seems like he shat his pants the entire movie. They're like, you remember that moment where when they're in the diner and they're talking about like trying to ruin Mike's reputation by like destroying his work, you know, even killing him potentially. And Doug's like, should I be here, man? And the other people are like, just based off of the look on his face, they're just like, are you okay? Is this guy okay? I'm not sure if he's okay because he's just like, but Doug, love that character. Great character. So Mike accepts the job, obviously, you know, and then when he goes into the pizzeria, I enjoy it. I'm a sucker for like abandoned malls, abandoned places from, you know, decades ago. It kind of, the height of this pizzeria was in the 80s. So everything's kind of a time capsule. I really do think like abandoned places like this that are pretty much intact, it's one of the only ways you can literally be in essentially a time machine. So that shit's always cool to me. And I enjoyed that aspect of the movie, just walking through the whole pizzeria. So now Aunt Jane, a lot of her things that she's trying to do are just not working to get custody over Abby. She's tried to go to Abby's school and bring the papers and try to get Mike to sign them and just say, Mike, you're not fit for this. She's trying to like brainwash him into saying, you're not fit for this. You don't want to do this. Come on. But luckily Mike's or Abby's teacher is like on Mike's side, which is nice. She kind of like reminds Mike that he loves her. And Mike kind of thinks that Abby doesn't really love her either, but the teacher has to remind him like, hey, look, she's really into art. What does she draw? Every single picture that she draws, you're in the middle of the picture. She clearly enjoys you. And that's one of the ways that kids express themselves is through their art. Key little point there that they're going to mention later in the movie that's going to be really damn important, the whole picture thing. So keep that in mind for later. So next, Auntie Jane is like, all right, what do I do now? So Abby, when Mike starts his job, he has to work nights at the pizzeria, you know, just as security at the pizzeria. So Mike has to have somebody watch Abby just during the nighttime, basically sleep in the house. I don't remember the babysitter's name, but he's not even paying her. She just seems like a neighbor that's cool with him, you know, maybe likes him. I'm not really sure. There's a moment there where she's like watching on QVC, like diamond rings. And she's like, I want a diamond ring. And Mike's in the room. You know, I don't really know what's going on there. But anyways, that's not really a big part of the movie. but she watches Abby at night and just, like I said, just kind of does it for free. But next there's a moment where Aunt Jane tries to use the babysitter and maybe her father or something like that. They seem like they live in Mike's neighborhood, which is like a rougher neighborhood. So they probably need some money. But essentially they offer her some money. They already offered her some money to like look for some blackmail on Mike in the house. She wasn't able to find anything. I kind of got the hint that maybe she didn't even look for it because she does like Mike and she really does like Abby and she thinks they are good with each other. But so Jane's like, you're not getting paid. I'm not paying you for that. You didn't find anything. So next they're kind of like, okay, what can we do next? And then the babysitter's dad or brother, whoever the hell he is, he's like, I got an idea. Let's go to Mike's new job. Let's trash the place. He'll lose the job. Then the courts will say he's unfit to be, have custody over Abby. And then Jane, you'll get her. And then you'll get your checks every month. But you got to pay us $1,000. So, or they said 2,000. And then Jane's like, 1,000. So that whole moment happens. And then the babysitter, the dad guy, I'll just call him dad, and then a few of his buddies break into the pizzeria after Mike leaves. And this part's actually a fun part because the horror definitely kicks up in this moment. It definitely gets more scary, more gruesome, more gory in this moment. So essentially all of them, they wait until morning time. Mike finishes his graveyard shift. He leaves for the day. They break in through like a side door or something like that. They break in, they start trashing the place. And the animatronics, they don't like that. They have shit they want to do and they don't want you trashing where they live. So they start getting picked off one by one. And that was an enjoyable part. They're satisfying deaths because these are like kind of like villains. They're kind of like shitty people ruining somebody's life just for a quick dollar. Not great people. So you're kind of like, okay, it's kind of enjoyable to see them die. And they die in kind of gruesome ways. Even the babysitter gets killed. And when the babysitter died, she got chopped in half. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. I was actually like, damn, I was not expecting that in a PG-13 horror movie. And that was kind of like the tipping point, like just right at the end of this entire scene with the break-ins and the deaths. So we got to see all these people get killed. And then bam, at the end, she's in, I want to say like a storage closet, or she ends up in there or something like that. And then one of the animatronics is right there. And she's kind of like looking inside of the animatronic, and then it grabs her, and then the mouth bites, and then boom, cut in half. We don't really see a lot of it, obviously, but we do get to see enough where you're like, oh, damn. And that was a moment where I was definitely like, whoa, jeez, that was dope. All right, and a little bit earlier in the story, Mike meets this cop who starts showing up at the pizzeria as well, which is also kind of weird. Right away, you're like, wait, what is she doing here? Why is she so into watching over this pizzeria? But anyways, her name is Vanessa, a very attractive cop. And right away, Mike's probably like, okay, she's kind of attractive. But Mike's the type of guy. He doesn't really wear his emotions on his sleeve. He's very like emotionless. By the way, great actor. I don't remember his name, but I think he does a really good job in this movie. But the cop, Vanessa, starts to show up and starts to like show a big interest. And you're kind of getting a sense right away. There's a lot more to her character than what meets the eye. She's not just like a neighborhood cop who happens to be patrolling around the area. She has a particular interest in this place for some reason. And that's another one of those things that kind of keeps you wanting more from the movie because they don't reveal it too early. They keep that story going. It keeps you wanting more. It keeps you kind of like wondering what she's about. And she's a side character, but that's another good aspect of the movie. But anyways, so Vanessa and Mike are starting to kind of get to know each other a little bit. Mike was dreaming, and in his dream, some stuff starts happening. He's seeing these visions of these new kids now. He's not only seeing the kidnapping of his brother Garrett, but now he's also in the dream seeing, I want to say I can't remember exact number of the kids. It was 3 or 4 kids. I could be wrong, but 3 or 4 new kids who are doing weird things. He sees them now when he turns around in the dreams. And then when he tries to ask them for help, they kind of just scatter. They don't give him a lot of information. Sometimes they even wound him. He gets sliced in one of them and then wakes up and he still has the wound in real life. So Vanessa kind of helps him with that wound. But anyways, they're kind of starting to get to know each other a little bit. And Mike's also kind of wondering like, what's up with this girl, Vanessa? What's going on here? All right, the next, Mike is trying to go to work and he keeps trying to get a hold of the babysitter, but he can't get a hold of her. He's wondering why. He keeps calling her because somebody's got to watch Abby while he goes and works the night shift. we know she's fucking dead. She got chopped in half. But Mike doesn't know that yet. So essentially, Mike's like, all right, what do I do? So he brings Abby to work with him. Abby kind of sleeps in like a little tent thing next to his desk where he's got the monitors and stuff like that. Mike eventually falls asleep. Oh, I didn't mention this earlier. Also, Mike has this book. He also listens to nature sounds, and then he also has a picture of Wisconsin that he looks at every night. It used to be on his ceiling above his bed. Now he brings it to work because he works the night shift so he can sleep. But these are all little triggers he tries to use to put him back into the moment of his dreams and back into that specific moment where his brother was kidnapped, so he can just consistently go back to that dream every single night and piece together clues and try to one day figure out and get a little glimpse into what happened to his brother and who the person, was who did this to his brother. But anyway, so Abby's with him at work. Abby's sleeping, and then something wakes Abby up. And then Abby goes out, and she eventually runs into the animatronics. And then eventually Mike wakes up as well, and Mike finds her, and she's like surrounded by all of the animatronics, all of the bears. And Mike's like, oh shit, like what the hell is going on here? One of them even starts walking towards her. She also sounds like she's in pain for some reason, but it turns out, don't worry about it. They're just tickling her. They're all friends now. Everybody's cool. They're all just tickling her right now. Which was, kind of a tense moment, I would say. Like you're kind of wondering like, oh shit, something's going to happen to her. These things are obviously not good. But I did think this moment was a little bit weird because we'll find out, later on the ultimate goal of these animatronics, and things. But I guess at this point, they can't take over Abby or kill Abby yet because they don't have the ability to do so, or Mike hasn't said yes yet, which we'll talk about in a second. But this whole moment was kind of cool, but it also lures Abby in because she's, it's very similar to Megan. This is another one of those moments that felt very similar to Megan. You've got kind of a robotic thing that the little girl who's very, very nice, who has some trauma and kind of a tough backstory, is starting to bond with, because like the girl in Megan, Abby doesn't really have friends other than imaginary friends. She's not social at school. She keeps to herself. So she bonds with a robot, very similar to this story. So Abby starts to bond with these robots a lot. So kind of an interesting aspect that will become very important later in the movie. And then come to find out that Mike notices in some of Abby's drawings at home, she's also been dreaming about Garrett, but I don't think she knew about Garrett. Mike also says that. How did you know about it? She, I don't think, knew really much at all about her, her little brother or her brother Garrett, who disappeared. So, but somehow she's starting to have these dreams about the moment that he was kidnapped. She wasn't even, I think, born yet at that point. So Mike's kind of wondering, like, how the hell did you learn that? Also, the kids who Mike's starting to have in his dreams are in Abby's pictures as well. So clearly she's starting to dream about these kids too. So it's another thing you're kind of wondering about. So now we've got Vanessa's backstory. You're really like wondering what's going to happen with that. Mike's backstory, you're really wondering, is he going to figure out who kidnapped his brother? And now you've got Abby, who's also dreaming about these kids. So you're wondering, again, who are these kids? What is important about these kids? Some of you, maybe it's in the video game. I don't know. I haven't played it. Some of you might have already predicted who these kids are. I wasn't able to because I went into this very, very blind. But I thought that was an interesting aspect and another thing that makes you kind of like keep wondering in the story. There's nothing worse than a movie that, halfway through the movie, you've basically gotten everything. So you're just kind of sitting through the next half of the movie with, you're not really like wondering what's going to happen, wanting more. But I found myself at this point wanting more and trying to figure out what's going to happen. And I was invested. So we do get to find out who these kids in Mike's dreams and Abby's dreams are. These are the kids who went missing in the 80s and the reason why the pizzeria shut down. They never found the kids because, like they say, the kids were the one place the cops never looked, which was inside of the animatronics. I don't know if there's like skeletons in there or not. I don't really know. They don't really show us. But another thing that was kind of like, oh, okay. Like I said, probably predictable for some of you that's just more knowledgeable about the Five Nights at Freddy's video game and just the lore and the other things and the whole kind of franchise. But to me, I was like, all right, I'm wanting more. I want to, I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen additionally with this story. Now Mike has another new dream, and these kids are again in his dream, and Mike again starts to talk to them, but the dream's different this time. His family's acting different. His parents are still happy-go-lucky, and now Garrett is sitting on the picnic table in the dream that he always has. He's not normally sitting on the picnic table, and Garrett's also happy he's not kidnapped, and the little kids are there. And so Mike's kind of like, shit, what's going on here? Like, what's the situation here? Why is this different? And the little kids say to Mike, you want this, don't you? You want this happy little family. You can have this. Every single night, you can have this. You just have to give us what we want. And as an audience, you're like, oh shit, what do they want? And it turns out they want Abby. These are the kids, and now they're kind of like possessed demons inside of the animatronics. And all Mike has to do is give the yes and say, yep, you can have Abby so I can have my happy little family, at least in my dreams. And Mike does accidentally say yes for a moment and then immediately regrets it, And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. He's immediately like, oh shit, no, I didn't mean to do that. So definitely an interesting part of the movie that keeps you wanting more. All right, so Mike has the dream where the little kids try to get the Abby deal going. He accidentally says yes, yada, yada, yada. So while this is all kind of going down, Mike's kind of freaking out, saying, no, I didn't mean that. I don't want that. I don't want that. And these little demon kids are kind of like slicing him up, beating him up pretty bad. And then amongst all this, Vanessa basically finds Mike and takes him to, I think she calls it like a police outpost or something like that, which I didn't even know existed. But it's like a place where there's supplies and stuff, and she can kind of fix him up, and it's somewhere nearby. But while she's fixing him up and stuff like that, so earlier, Mike had to go to work. He promised Vanessa basically that he wouldn't bring Abby to the pizzeria anymore. It was too dangerous. And Vanessa was essentially like, just trust me. I know it's just not going to work out for her. You have to trust me. You cannot bring her anymore. It is too dangerous. So this night, when he has this dream, Abby is not being watched by, obviously the babysitter's dead. He's actually being watched by Aunt Jane. And Abby's pretty pissed about the whole thing because he's like, I got to go to work, but I want you to see somebody who's here. And Aunt Jane is here. So Aunt Jane essentially watches Abby. He doesn't sign any custody paperwork or anything like that, but Aunt Jane watches Abby for the night, which basically means Abby stays in her room and Aunt Jane probably smokes cigarettes, drinks scotch, and watches QVC. You know what I mean? But anyways, so while Mike's kind of getting all fixed up, obviously now he's out of the dream. So he's like, oh shit, I got to go save Abby. What's going on with Abby? Something's probably going down with Abby. And something definitely did go down with Abby. And this is a whole sequence that I enjoyed. I thought this whole thing was cool. It also did kind of remind me of Megan. Abby kind of comes out of her room, notices the animatronics kind of in the shadow at her house now. One of them, I forget which, exactly which one it was, but that felt very similar to the ending of Megan. If you've seen Megan, you know what I'm talking about. But anyways, Aunt Jane is on the ground. The little boy is there. The little blonde boy is there too with the animatronic. He's like a little ghost kid now. He's kind of like, somehow Abby can see him, this little ghost kid now. In reality, she's not in a dream. Aunt Jane, he's like, don't worry about Aunt Jane. She's just sleeping. And Abby's a little kid, so she believes him. She doesn't think anything, harmful happened. She thinks these animatronics are nice. They're just her new friends. She doesn't have a lot of friends, but the little kids in this movie, great acting from the kids in this movie. I thought they did a really damn good job, and they were pretty creepy. So whoever casted them, bravo to you. Really good job there. So now they want to bring Abby back to the pizzeria to turn her into one of them. The whole part with like it's supposed to be kind of like an Uber driver, but it's not. It's a taxi driver. Come on, what year is this? 2005? Taxis? No, but that part was kind of funny. But yeah, I don't even actually come to think of it. I don't know exactly when this movie takes place. I was wondering throughout the entire movie because everything in the movie makes it kind of feel like it's the 90s or maybe 2000s. Let me know down in the comments down below. I actually was just thinking about that just now off the cuff, what year this movie takes place. I don't know. But anyway, so Uber probably didn't even exist. But anyways, you've got a guy who's kind of like an Uber driver. He's like, Great. He sees Abby get into the car and he's like, all right, where do you need to go, little girl? And then the car kind of like sinks down and he's like, oh shit, what now? And he looks back, he's like, ah, Jesus. And it's one of the animatronics. And he's like, ah, I always get the weird ones, you know, but I enjoyed that. Enjoyed the taxi driver. He also gets a post-credit scene, which was kind of funny too. But anyways, they're like, we need to go here. So takes him to the pizzeria. Abby goes to the pizzeria with him. Abby still thinks everything's cool. They go to the pizzeria. The animatronics, one of them in particular, starts to take her back into one of the storage rooms. And Abby's now starting to wonder, like, what's going on here? And this is a creepy scene. I enjoy it. You're also wondering, like, what's going to happen here? Obviously, you're probably thinking Abby's not going to get taken here or killed. That's not going to happen. But I like the way it's pulled off. I like how dark it is. I like the way it's lit. And just this whole, like, aspect was enjoyable for me. You know, so they're essentially trying to put her inside of this contraption we saw earlier, which I think is like a creepy clown suit kind of a thing. And we saw it earlier with Vanessa. It's just a small moment. Vanessa's like, oh, don't touch that. Because that thing's kind of like, it malfunctions a lot. It's got like this like inner working. So if you put basically a kid in there, it basically just like claws around them and keeps them inside of the animatronic. But anyway, so that thing's there and they're trying to put Abby inside of it. But now she's like, no, I'm not doing this. You know what I mean? No. Mike and Vanessa show up. And then Vanessa tells Mike, basically, she kind of, for her own reason, knows sort of the Achilles heel to these animatronics. She's like, you can't shoot them. You can't, there's not a lot of things you can do to them, but a taser will work really well. These like cattle prod cop things will work really well as well. So Mike shows up, doesn't see Abby, but he shows up, sees the whole stage thing. There's two of them kind of performing their little thing. They almost see him. They don't see him. And then Mike tases them. Enjoyed that. That was cool. Kind of like put the water on the ground, tases them. They fall over. He hears Abby scream, runs to go save Abby, right? And now kind of the finale, big fight sequence happens. Shit goes down. A lot of fighting here going on. And then we also get more information about who's behind all this. And it turns out, as some of you might have guessed, I didn't really guess, but once it was revealed, I was like, you dipshit. Matthew Lillard's character is behind it all. So the big bunny comes out, lifts off his head mask, and it's Matthew Lillard. He even spits just like in Scream. So I was like, Scream! Matthew! Yes. I actually really enjoyed it. It was like very much like tipping its cap to Scream. So, but it was enjoyable. It was kind of like Stu Macher is back, baby. But in Five Nights at Freddy's, unfortunately. He's coming back in Scream 7. Don't worry about that, though. He is. He's the one kind of leading the whole like group. You know what I mean? I was just going to say a Scream 5 spoiler, but I'm not going to say it because some of you out there probably haven't seen Scream 5, and this isn't a Scream 5 video. So I digress. Anyways, turns out it's Matthew Lillard, Vanessa's dad. He's basically an evil serial killer who has killed children and somehow put their souls into these animatronics. So the little kids, as you could have guessed, that Mike has been seeing and Abby has been seeing are the missing kids from the 80s that are inside of these animatronics. I think I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but it was him. It was Matthew Lillard's character, who's Vanessa's dad. So Vanessa, you kind of find out also, is kind of a piece of shit because she is kind of involved too. Like Matthew Lillard's character even says, like, your job is to make sure they keep this place safe, but they don't find out too much. Like that was her entire job. That's the entire like reason why she kept showing up to the pizzeria, was to make sure, he's doing his job, but he's not finding out too much. But come to find out, she really got to know Mike and Abby and their backstory and couldn't let this happen. So she puts a gun on her dad. She eventually gets stabbed by her dad. Another kind of Scream sequence. In the trailer, you might have seen it as well. The big bunny doing the Scream, like knife cleaning movement. So that was kind of cool. A little cap tip to Scream there. It was kind of enjoyable. But anyways, Vanessa gets stabbed. She's on the ground, out for the count, essentially. Now, the whole aspect earlier in the movie, how Abby's really into art, It's a big part. Her teacher mentions it's a huge part of how kids express themselves. So now the way to truly defeat the big bad bunny is Abby needs to draw a picture, because essentially these kids whose souls are trapped in the animatronics, somehow their memory was wiped. So they don't know that the big bunny killed them. Matthew Lillard's character killed them and trapped them in here. They don't know that because their memories have essentially been wiped somehow. I'm assuming in the sequel, we'll probably learn more. We'll talk about that in a second. But now Abby has to draw a picture of what happened to them to remind them of what happened to them. So they'll turn on the bunny and kill him. And that's exactly what goes down. And I enjoyed that twist. I liked that. I like how when movies give you little nuggets earlier in the movie and then they call back to those moments. It wasn't just a random moment. It wasn't just a random line. It actually was going to be tied back in later in the story. And I really enjoy that. There's a lot of movies. I recently watched Signs. Signs, a movie that does that a lot. These little nuggets of gold they give you earlier swing away. Some of the memories that come up as very important towards the end of the movie. Obviously, this movie's not Signs, but that's just an example of these little nuggets in the storyline that they give you, that they tie in later on. And I enjoy that. And it kind of also keeps you engaged because you're like, what's going to tie in next? Anyways, Abby draws the picture. The animatronics turn on Matthew Lillard's big bad bunny and they fight him, defeat him kind of in a way. And his suit, there's also like this little, in the opening thing, there was like this little small animatronic that attacked the security guard in the opening to the movie. That thing comes back and like takes a bite out of Matthew Lillard's suit. It exposes the little like contraption inside the suit. Now the contraption is kind of like actually puncturing his body. So that goes down, the contraption kind of punctures his body. He's not dead though. And the movie kind of ends at that point with Matthew Lillard's character locked in one of the like storage closets. He's clearly not dead, he's just wounded. And then it also shows, the movie kind of officially ends showing Abby making new friends, doing so much better. Mike's doing much better mentally. Just everything's much better. And I forgot to also mention something very, very important. It does also reveal, and Matthew Lillard's character also admits that he was the one that killed Mike's brother, Garrett. So we also find that out, which is huge. So Mike finally gets closure. And at the end of the movie, they're all happy-go-lucky and everything's doing all right. And that's essentially the end of the movie. So the big bad bunny, the main villain in the story, still alive, we think. Kind of an ambiguous ending, and the ending definitely leaves open the opportunity for a sequel. So I enjoyed the ending. I enjoyed the reveal, huge Scream fan. So maybe it's kind of fan service to me, but I enjoyed that. Like I mentioned, I enjoyed like how the movie kept me engaged. I found myself throughout the beginning and the middle parts of the movie and the end of the movie, like still interested. I actually like consciously said to myself, I'm still interested here. Unlike Megan, where I kind of checked out pretty early, I was still interested in this. And I think obviously the gore is very, very toned down for a PG-13 movie. Yes, I would prefer more gore, more scares. I'm about that. I love that kind of thing. But, this is a good like gateway to horror movie for a lot of people, an introduction to horror. It's a movie you can definitely take, if you're a family, you've got some teenagers who haven't really got into horror movies yet. This is a good opportunity. I saw a kid at the theater all dressed up, ready for this. So I know there's going to be a ton of kids, going to see this because the game's huge with a, younger demographic, especially. But I enjoyed it. Surprisingly, I really enjoyed the movie. I talk about this more in my spoiler-free review, but I enjoyed it. I had a good time for what it is. Is it my favorite movie of the year or anything like that? No, but I had a good time. I found myself wanting more, and I will definitely watch the sequel because I'm sure they're going to have a sequel. I don't know exactly how the movie's doing financially, but if I were to guess, it's probably doing pretty well financially, if I had to guess. But I enjoyed it. I would recommend that you all check it out as well. But anyways, thanks so much for watching my spoiler review. I know this is a long one. Hopefully you got some food. You sat down for this. But yeah, we got pretty nitty-gritty into the sweaty of the movie. Kind of rambled a little bit, but thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, go and check out some of my other videos right next to me right here. Got a lot of horror content on the channel. October is almost over. I've got some more content coming to round out the rest of the month. But anyways, everybody, don't ever forget that it's always Halloween.